Well, hello again everyone. I know that I've featured quite a number of wheel builds in my videos, and we've always given them a spin and had a look at the deflections, the run out and whatever with the gauges. This is something slightly different that I'm doing here. Obviously I've attended to this wheel. It's a used wheel that had lots of slack spokes and quite a kick in it from side to side, and it needed truing and the spokes checking and tensioning. But one of the little pitfalls that I ran into, which you can often with an old wheel, is sometimes not all the spoke nipples want to turn freely to adjust the spokes, and you might find that applying too much pressure on them. I'll just demonstrate here. I've actually already done this wheel, so I'm not going to get too carried away, but if you put a certain amount of pressure on the nipple to try and turn it, you might get perhaps even as far as an eighth of a turn. But if you let go, the spanner or whatever you're using will spring back, because all you're doing is twisting the spoke, because the nipple is seized onto the threads and doesn't want to move. You can apply heat to the nipples, which can work, but you've got to be very careful. You don't want to put too much heat on them. It's something like a gas welding or brazing torch set with a very gentle flame is about as hot as you want to go, or maybe a gas soldering gun or something. You really don't want to get too much heat into them, and you certainly don't want, if they're steel spokes, you don't really want them getting red hot. But what you do want to do is get a reasonable amount of heat in very quickly into the nipples, and then quickly take the torch away and then get your spanner on and it might go. Another way of doing it is with these mole grips, or if you're from across the pond you might call them vice grips. But where you might put a certain amount of pressure on a stubborn spoke nipple and it doesn't want to go, and then you put that little bit more pressure on and then bang, snap, your spoke has snapped, and that's something that you really don't want, because the torsion that you're putting on it, even though you're trying to tighten the nipple down here, you're probably going to break the spoke up here somewhere if you go forcing it too much. So that's a no-no, and a good way around that, to stop the spoke actually sort of twisting in torsion, if you like, is to get these clamped up tightly on a spoke very near the nipple, and then use your spanner or whatever other device on the nipple very close to where the mole grips are, and you can see the spoke doesn't twist at all and the nipple moves. And obviously if you have to heat them up to get them moving, it's quite a good idea to give them a shot of penetrating fluid or WD-40, something like that, from in there. Let's see if I can do this. Spray them there, and while they're still hot, and that stuff will actually work its way into the threads, and you can also spray a bit on the spokes and it'll run down into the nipples. And it does actually, between heating them and putting that stuff on, it makes them much more easy to move and adjust. And I actually came up against probably about a dozen spokes in this wheel that felt like they didn't want to go, and may well have broken the spokes if I put too much force on them. But by clamping the spokes close to the nipples with these, I got them all moving. So that just might be a handy tip for anyone who finds that they need to adjust their spokes. And obviously if you're doing this with the wheel in situ on the bike, it is advisable and best to let the air out the inner tube before you do it. And if you get more than perhaps a turn and a half or two adjustment take up on them, it might be worth actually popping the tyre off and having a look to make sure that no spoke ends have come through and are now protruding, because if that's the case, you're on course for a puncture, and that's more bad news. But there we are. I just thought that I'd make this slightly different video about a wheel, and some of the possible things that you can run into when trying to adjust the spokes and ways around them. I hope that maybe that might be of interest to somebody. Thanks for watching.